Hi, Shantel. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, great, thank you. And it was so fantastic to be speaking to you today. So thank you very much for taking the time.
Yeah, I'm so happy to. I'm sitting in my hotel room in Toronto, so
Wow. Oh, well, it's wonderful to be talking. I've been a fan of your work for a while, but to be talking about this film in particular, because I had such a great time with it. But I am curious, when a project like this comes your way, what is it about a role like Jamie that really jumps out at you and makes you want to get involved?
there were a few factors. I mean, the first thing I did was read the script and instantly, obviously, the story's not about Jamie, but it's about different people's perspective of who her brother was. So to be able to tell that slice of the pie was really interesting to me. The family dynamic, the nuanced complexity of loving somebody who's done the worst possible thing that you could ever imagine. And the fallout from that and the disappearance like of their own father and then the disappearance of her brother, like there's this tiny little window into each person's lens, like through their lens, that we get to see who he was and how he was seen in the world. And that's really interesting to me. And then after speaking with Matthew, the writer director of it, and realizing that our ideas were quite aligned, and then knowing that Tom and Ryan and Jackie and all sorts of incredible actors were attached to it, it felt like a place where I knew I was going to be able to creatively spar with really wonderful actors, and that's always exciting.
Oh, fantastic. And I know as soon as I finished watching the film, I think like a lot of people, I started jumping on Wikipedia and YouTube and trying to read more about this case. And I know Jamie spoke to the press last year for the first time, but is she someone that you got to speak to? And even if you didn't, were those videos of any use to you to maybe find who she was a little bit?
So we filmed this in 2020. So
Wow.
we filmed it before she came out with her book, and I only could do the research that I had through the internet. But Matthew was really great about it because he said, "We're not filming a documentary. This is not like a real telling of what happened. This is fictional, and it's a story about." This man and what he did and the intrigue that Matthew had in it and from the different perspectives. So it was really just about drawing upon humanness and upon the complexity of human experience in some of the worst situations with the people we love the most. And so I didn't have those tools. And it was okay because what I did have was lots of people's theories and I guess my own judgments as well. Going to a most wanted list and seeing a man who was next to Osama bin Laden and thinking that you could ever compare the two was my own judgment, like where you find yourself saying really terrible things like, well, he only killed one person. And, this guy, and you're like, oh my gosh, like you're judging yourself for, ranking who's better than who or who's worse than who. And kind of taking those feelings and infusing them into a character that had their own personal love and connection and the same blood as somebody who's capable of this and what that complexity would feel like. I really remember filming the scene with Tom where he's packing up and I come home after seeing the news and just getting to sink our teeth into what that scene was. And the same with, playing the scene with Jackie Weaver, my mom, and not wanting to turn my brother in because it's your brother. And it's hard because my Chantel brain thinks, what the F? He did this murder, you have to turn him in. But the human sister love bond side is so much more complex and interesting, and that's why I do what I do, is to play those shades of gray. And whether or not that's truthful to how she felt, it was just the story that we kind of ultimately decided we wanted to convey about family and love.
Yeah, well, absolutely. And I think the relationships are so important in this film. And of course, we do see Jason from so many different perspectives. And in Jamie's case, they have a very loving and I think quite complex relationship from their childhood. So did you and Tom actually get a chance to talk much about that? Or were you very much just thrown into the deep end? You had the script and just found that chemistry on set?
No, we got really lucky because when I signed on to it, I told Matthew, like, I'm not leading this movie, but there is something really important here about family, especially considering the story of their father and the fact that their father, was a con artist and in trouble with the law and disappeared. That there was a story within the story that in so few scenes that I understand, but we needed to make sure we conveyed. So we got to kind of dive in and we did some chemistry Zoom reads because it was still COVID times of quarantining for a while before we started shooting. And we got to kind of, Tom and I over Zoom just start to work it out and talk it out. And so when we actually saw each other on set, it just fell into everything so nicely because we had these times to talk about the relationship ahead of time. And I mean, Tom is incredible, and that was a really big factor for why I wanted to do the film as well. Not only Matthew's like passion and investment in writing it and directing it, and following this story since he was young, but also just working with somebody like Tom, who is like all in immersive, and I work in much the same way. And it's like theater. You're just there and present for 14 hours of playing and digging and discovering.
Oh, how fantastic. And I know for you, emotionally, you get really put through the ringer in this film. As you said, the scene with Jamie's mum, and then obviously with everything with Jason's.